You're gonna sit back in that chair.
All right, meeting is called to order. We'll need a roll call to determine if we've got a quorum.
Okay. Miller.
Yep.
Tepley.
Here.
Coppernoll.
Here.
Jelinek.
Here.
Wilson.
Here.
Cairns. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Was this meeting properly noticed?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda, approval of the minutes. Once the group has had a moment to review, entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Motion for Mr. Jelinek. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Wilson. Any discussion of the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes from the last meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Minutes approved. Okay, discussion and action items. Item 1, public hearing for the application of Johnson LLC for a conditional use permit to allow for an auto repair garage or facility at 943 Saxonville Road, tax parcel ID 276-22159-2000. I do not see a representative from Johnson LLC here. Does anyone have information on this?
Yeah, you got a lot in.
Yeah, I actually have quite a bit here. So for the zoning of it, it's zoned commercial general. So in the regular ordinance for commercial general, it would not apply for an auto repair shop. So that's why they're doing the conditional use permit. You can see there, auto repair garage, facility, automotive, and other vehicles of transportation, sales, whether new or used, and open sales lot or open storage would fall underneath the conditional use. So that being said, the criteria, you guys can kind of just read through that. It does meet the comprehensive plan. It is still zone commercial for comprehensive plan. The ones that I really kind of wanted to point out is 4 through 6. As you guys can see, I did include some pictures of the front and the back of that property. So as number 4 reads, the request can demonstrate adequate provisions for maintenance of use granted by the conditional use report and associated structures approved under said permit. And like I said, as the per attached photos, there are concerns that provision for maintaining the grounds and building are not being met. There are multiple vehicles there. They're unlicensed. They are torn apart, and that's just not allowed in our booklet.
Can we see those photos again? I'm familiar, but I don't know if everybody is. I know Karen is.
And Mayor, also, we didn't do a proper introduction of Matt either.
That's true.
Say, who are you?
Well, I'm so sorry. I should have started off with that. I'm the new zoning administrator, Matt Williams.
I met the new zoning administrator.
Sorry, I should have started off with that.
You did. Okay, so I'm aware of, I've been to the property and I've seen photos too. I'm aware of its current condition, which I am not at all happy with. I don't think anybody here is. I don't see a representative here from somebody who wants us to give them a conditional use permit after running that property into that condition. I'm not thrilled by any of this.
Where is it?
So we'll be right across from Schreiber Foods.
Okay.
So if you're by TKS, headed down Saxonville Road going towards Subway, it'd be off to your left. So his previous conditional use report was Victor Powell of VP Motors. He towed vehicles out, like he towed vehicles and did, I think, a little bit of maintenance there, but not a lot.
So if those of you who've been in the area for a while, that was the original building for what was once Bristol Motors, became Vitesnik Motors. That was their original structure right there. And there were new cars under that canopy for many years, coming and going. And they used to keep, three-wheelers in crates and cars in that area where you saw all the oil on the ground. That's many years ago now, but to give you a little historical, that was built to be a car dealership decades ago. And then in recent years, it was storage. When the Vitesnik family still had it, they would do things like keep boats in there in the winter and things like that. And they sold it, I don't know, it's a few years. I think on a land contract, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm probably 98% sure on that one. And then we got here, with the conditional use that was granted to, what was the gentleman's name?
Victor Powell.
And we then subsequently have watched that property fall into its current condition.
So this is actually from 2016, correct? So I mean, you can tell just from, you know, the 8 years, just how much it's declined.
Can I, a couple clarification questions? So the conditional use permit was issued to Mr. Powell, who is not the gentleman who is currently running the business, because I think it was, what, Johnson? I'm assuming a conditional use does not move with the property, or am I wrong?
Correct, so it actually, his was only good for 1 year, so he applied in 2019, and then June 3rd, 2020, that permit expired. And then the new owner took possession of this, I'm thinking Victor sold it to this Eric Johnson.
Okay, and so he may have potentially been unaware that he had to apply for, potentially unaware he had to apply?
Correct.
Or he just bought it or leased it and just started doing his thing without?
So, what I did kind of do some research also yesterday. So I did talk with the chief of police a little bit. So the guy that actually owns this building is not the guy that's running his operation out of there. It'd be a Michael Kellogg that's actually running the business, and that Eric Johnson owns the building. And with talking with Billy a little bit yesterday, since 2002 to date, they had 9 interactions with that property, noise complaints. He says that what they like to do is when they're done working on one of these diesel trucks, they take it and go down to the stoplights and, you know, do burnouts and exhaust and whatnot.
Clarify, did you say since 2002, so in 2020?
No, 2022, sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say
2022, I
20 years,
apologize.
that's not-
I apologize.
Okay. Okay, sounds good, clarification. Okay, you're good.
Karen, what did you want to say? Sorry.
Well, in addition to the looks of the property, many times there are these very wide trucks with mirrors that are extended even further, parked on the street, or sometimes parked part on the street and part on the sidewalk. But when they're fully on the street, I don't even want to watch what happens. Because if you have a semi going down there and just another vehicle, it is, it's not safe. So there's that. There's a safety issue there as well.
So what is he, so when you go by, there's vehicles that are half taken apart, there's like shells vehicles. What is the business actually attempting or wanting to do?
Diesel auto is what he's got for his application, diesel auto repair.
Okay.
But like you said, according to the pictures,
There's parts and there's trucks without anything in the engine compartment.
So if you look at one of the pictures, that truck that had no doors, had no motor, that was actually on Sheldon Street, which would be on the upper side of this property. And I mean, that sat there throughout the day. I've had multiple complaints from the residents since we did post that hearing in the paper. All of them, honestly, they weren't really wanting to see the business go. They just think that the conduct that's being had there is inappropriate for the business. I guess, you know, as you guys can see, safety-wise, one of the safety concerns that they had is skid steer. Actually, the guy showed me a video of it. It'd be on like the back side here. There was a half torn apart truck, like on a trailer like this, and then they had a skid steer back, and they had it lifted in the air, and they were actually cutting that truck up and blocking the majority of this road, and it was for a long period of time. He had multiple videos of him recording that, and there was a kid kind of around there, so safety-wise, it's pretty scary, but.
Yeah, they had the skid steer down on Sexton Road earlier today. I almost ran into them.
Really?
Yeah.
And I know yesterday when I drove past there, they were tearing up the concrete, it looked like, on the inside.
Yeah.
So I don't know if, you know, with this oil and stuff leaking out onto the road, if they were trying to make a drain to catch that, to pitch it back into there so it's not going out onto the road. I'm not really sure what the intent there is. But when they were bringing that concrete out, they actually were just coming on the building and they were dumping it right there. So I'm sure that's probably not going to be moved.
Another clarification, because you brought up the busted out concrete in the garage, and I noticed that too, and they're taking off the garage doors, putting on new. Wouldn't that need a building permit, or am I way off on?
So it shouldn't need a building permit because it's not changing the footprint of the building.
Okay. It just seemed like a lot was happening, and if we're applying for a conditional use, there seems to be other things occurring that I don't know what we need permits for and don't need permits for.
I think that's a great point, because we don't really truly know what is happening in there.
Right.
We can make some assumptions, but they haven't approached
Okay.
Matt for any additional permitting outside of this. And Matt, can you explain why this is even before them today? How did this come to be?
Yeah.
So we actually had a complaint stating that just the condition of the building. And then when zoning took it and ran with it, it was discovered that they did not have a conditional use permit. So after we kind of started doing a little bit more investigation to it, obviously started coming across more and more problems, more and more issues, so.
So I'm assuming, since it's public hearing for Johnson LLC to apply, that they're aware we're doing this?
Yes. We did the public notice in the paper, and then we also sent out 300 feet radius of that location to all the residents. So, and they did get it. Their name was actually on there, on that 300-foot radius that we did send out.
And additionally, the owner of the property did come to the clerk's office to get an application, and I spoke with him and explained that there'd be a public hearing and that there was a process too. So they're aware of the process that we're going through and perhaps chose not to attend.
Okay, all right, so I'm gonna make sure we're following rules here. We are actually in the public hearing, so just to play by the rules, is there anyone from the public who would like to speak regarding the application of Johnson LLC for a conditional use permit to allow for an auto repair garage or facility at 943 Sextonville Road? We'll get back to Matt. Right, I've got to do that 3 times. We'll call that one time. I didn't hear anyone the first time. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak at the public hearing for the application of Johnson LLC for a conditional use permit to allow for an auto repair garage or facility at 943 Sextonville Road, tax parcel ID 276-22159-2000. Okay, third and final request, is there any member of the public who would like to speak at the public hearing for the application of Johnson LLC for a conditional use permit to allow for an auto repair garage or facility at 943 Sextonville Road, tax parcel ID 276-22159-2000? Okay, hearing none, I will now entertain a motion to close the public hearing for the application of Johnson LLC for a conditional use permit to allow for an auto repair garage or facility at 943 Sextonville Road.
So moved.
Motion from Ms. Tepley, second from
Me. Second.
Lisa. Okay, any discussion?
I'd like to have a clarification.
Let me finish the public
Yeah.
hearing.
Okay.
Any discussion on closing the public hearing? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of closing the public hearing for the application of Johnson LLC, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. Mr. Wilson.
Okay. Under open sales lot or open storage, would open storage be considered a salvage yard?
That's a good question. I don't know that.
Because at one time, that back lot back there, throughout the years, was covered with scrap. Junk cars,
Really?
yes. I can remember it as a boy.
Hmm.
We can-
5 years ago.
Oh, no, a lot of years. I just don't want to see something like that happen.
So that's going back to the Bristol
Bristol.
days?
So that would actually be, so that only falls under the conditional use report, or permit. So if somebody wants to run that operation like the way it is, obviously cleaned up and maintained, they'd still have to apply for that conditional use, which then you could state your conditions in there and stating that there won't be open storage or junkyard or parts or whatever there.
I think
They're working on it.
he can check the definitions that we have in the code, but from my memory, I think salvage yards and that have a different definition, so they wouldn't fall under open storage or open sales.
Okay, my concern is looking at the vehicles that are there, eventually it's going to turn into that.
Well, okay, guys, so we're in a situation right now, all right. Let's just tie this in. Next on the agenda, consider the application of Johnson LLC for conditional use permit. Okay, so to cover that in under this topic, they have an expired conditional use permit for what they're doing there in the first place, and they're requesting a new permit to do this business down there, and we are required to grant one of it. That's why we're here. So I do know the police have been there several times. I've talked to Billy about this place more than once, Chris McGowan and Mike Wendell. So this has been an ongoing issue, which is obvious when you hear how many times the police are there, 9 times?
9 times.
So it's
2 years.
it's an ongoing issue down there. Karen's exactly right. On the highway, or not anymore, the church, the Sextonville Road side of that building, when you park wide trucks on either side and you have side mirrors, that is a suddenly very narrow 2-lane road. And yeah, Schreiber Foods is close, Foremost Farms is close, you get semis going in the middle of that. That's, okay, and then you see, I mean, they can say they didn't know, somebody mentioned maybe they didn't know that they needed to request a new conditional use permit, but I don't believe they need to be told you can't dump oil on the ground and leave it there. We'll start with that. I have no appetite at all to approve a conditional use permit for this business until that's fixed. Any other comments?
Can you imagine how contaminated that is?
So I did just put down, just for, maybe we can give them until next month's meeting and to meet some conditions. I mean, to try to get it cleaned up, that's all I can kind of recommend. I hate to see them leave, but at the same standpoint, it's not doing any good for that building or property the way that they're using it now, so.
I'm going to make a motion to refer this matter to Attorney Mike Wendell, City Attorney, to meet with this business owner. And I'll just say set conditions to clean that, because they're in violation now. That's
Correct.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's my question. So they are in violation. So is this something then is referred to the police department next
Well,
to write citations?
That's why I want to send it to Michael to confer with Billy. You can do it either way, send it to Billy, so and send it to Michael, but I'm right on the same page.
So refer the matter to Attorney Wendell to meet with the owner to set conditions to resolve violations present.
Yeah, prior to further consideration for a conditional use permit.
So in the meantime, do they continue to do business?
This is why we're sending this to the attorney, to sort that out.
So I do have a list of conditions.
That was my question right there.
Right.
What are the conditions?
Well, that's why I'm sending it to Michael, but you can put some in there if you want to.
Well, that's
Right.
what I want to know is what's
And
on it.
it is on the back or the page, last page before the pictures start on
I
the
didn't get
document.
any pictures, I just.
So the project must be consistent with the plans and specifications submitted at the time of application, which they're gonna run an auto repair business out of there, that they're currently doing that. The applicant should allow city zoning staff to access the site for inspection of the property throughout the term of the permit. The application and its tenants shall use any means of absorption
Time
such.
out. Are you trying to write all of this, actually?
No,
Okay, I thought, okay, go ahead.
Absorption such as oil dry to contain oil, gas, grease spills, and properly dispose of that material. Inoperable vehicles shall not be parked on public roads or right-of-ways. The screening provision, so that was kind of something for that the neighborhood up on the top side on Sheldon. Maybe they could do some sort of a screening, a fence or something along the lines of that to kind of help hide that. The conditional use permit is not transferable. The conditional use permit, if approved, is good for 1 year from date of approval by common council. The permit is not renewable without another public hearing. Any denial of any of these conditional use may be appealed to the Board of Zoning Appeals and then to Circuit Court. That's all I have. So if anybody wants to put some more on there,
Shouldn't it be inspected by Tracy?
All of this is why I'm trying to send it to the attorney,
Right.
because then he'll make sure they're in compliance, and compliance means all city ordinances, and if we need the building inspector, Michael can do that with Tracy.
Because that makes sense.
That's why I'm sending it to Michael. It's because then well, the whole idea is, if there are ordinance violations, get those corrected. If that property needs to be inspected, get Tracy down here. That's why I think the attorney is the right place to put this.
I'd like to see something put in there about hours of operation.
so that
They're
would,
not down there at midnight working on their.
that was actually on my other sheet too, because that was one of the things from the residents there, that the operational, during the hours of operation, they're down there 11 o'clock, midnight, wrenching or starting their vehicles, so maybe some sort of a limit on their hours. But that's all I had.
Okay, so I've made a motion to refer this to the city attorney. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second from Mr. Wilson. Is there further discussion?
Yeah, just as some clarification. So by referring it to the attorney, so depending on our attorney's schedule and when the attorney can get back to this business, what happens? I mean, tonight this is before us to either approve or not approve a conditional use permit. Does any of that convey back to the place of business that it was not approved? And
I guess, can we say not approved as of tonight?
That was actually part of my motion to not consider this application.
Until the attorney, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So I would recommend, if there is a possibility that this would eventually be approved, that it not be outright denied tonight, because then it would require another public hearing, another publication, and notifications, and all of those things. And the goal from zoning side is always voluntary compliance. So if we can work with a resident, a property owner, to get them to come into compliance without issuing citations or doing something like, in this case, shutting down a business, that would be the preference. So allowing a reasonable amount of time to coordinate with the attorney and work with the property owner, because once they consult with one another and determine what needs to be fixed, it would be essentially the same as a notice of violation that we send on other properties that have violations, code violations. Once they develop that, they'll put a timeline together, so it could be like 30 days or 45 days, depending on the severity of the situation, something reasonable, and so there's a deadline imposed. And that way, on that date, Matt will go back and check, and did that get resolved or not? And if it isn't, then he'll need to report back to this commission and say, work with the attorney, here's the update, what would you like to do?
That's what I'm going for. Just get Michael down there working with him, and then he might come back and tell us what they did, and then we can consider the application.
yeah, and I'm all in favor of that. We don't like to just put a notice on the door, you're out of business. But the fact that they applied and they are not here without any explanation, or I'm sorry, we can't make it, either the business, the party that is actually in business there, nor the owner of the property. So that's, I guess, why I thought there needed to be a little bit more under the, a little more action, and a little more actionable, something so that they move on this.
So then, just to clarify, so if we refer this to the attorney, we don't deny it, we don't accept it, we just kind of refer it to the attorney. So they carry on doing business as such until a future time that the attorney and us come to a conclusion on you either can or cannot at this point, correct? Okay.
So if the person does not comply by whatever that date is,
Sure.
then we'll bring it back here to recommend action,
Action.
which could be imposing fines, citations, that sort of thing. And then essentially, it is an expired conditional use permit, so it's an illegal operation right now.
Sure.
And so then, however we would like to pursue that, we can decide at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Then one follow-up question. So because it's right now an illegal operation, what if there's a fire there or there's something that happens? City, are we under any additional
No, it would be,
obligation for?
I mean, we have a timeline that we have to adhere to as far as taking enforcement action, but that will be initiated tomorrow when Matt reaches out to Michael, they'll begin the process. So we have a clock that is ticking, but just like if you were a homeowner and you did something that required a permit, you built a deck and you didn't get a permit, we're not at fault for that if something, from a liability standpoint, if something were to happen. But once we are aware of a violation, we do have to take action to resolve that. Otherwise, if our time runs out, we actually can't take enforcement action anymore.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. Good information.
Lisa, did you have something?
Well, would it not make, and I'm not saying don't send it to the attorney, wouldn't it make kind of more sense to send inspector in there to say, this is the stuff that's got to get done? So here, attorney, because you don't know the building, you know what I'm saying? Do that first and then,
So the way we addressed similar properties, they weren't commercial, they were residential. But we started with the lawyer who worked with the inspector. It hasn't been in this committee, just some other properties we had to deal with in town. Just to make sure, it's a long story, that's the right way to do it, given the personalities we're working with, is for Mr. Wendell to contact the building inspector and instruct him of what we need him to do.
Mayor, additionally, this property, from what we're aware of, and we don't know everything, there are multiple code violations, some of which are zoning, some of which are public nuisance, so it's across the board. We've got a lot of different violations that individually would be handled by multiple departments. So with the attorney involved, he's able to take a broad brush and capture all of those violations rather than zoning coming at it from one angle, and then we've got the police coming at it from another, and then the building inspector. So we've got an umbrella this way.
That's,
Yeah.
well, I'm not, again, not saying.
that was a lot better explanation of what I was trying to say. We've had to do this. It just wasn't stuff that came to planning, but with other properties that are falling into disrepair and so on and so forth. And the way we got results was to do it this way, just like that. And then because Michael's got that umbrella, and he can work with law enforcement, zoning and building inspector and city staff, whoever he needs. And it has worked.
And additionally, oftentimes in circumstances like this, there needs to be permission to enter the property,
Yeah.
which is usually not given. So it's oftentimes that you'll have to go to the circuit court and get a special inspection warrant. So it does help us to have the attorney involved at the beginning, so that way we can walk through that process.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, I want a roll call on this one, please.
All right. Wilson.
Aye.
Jelinek.
Aye.
Tepley.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Coppermouth.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay. So that takes care of, the public hearing's done. That's item 2. Item 3 is a comprehensive plan review and update. I know Karen had requested this to be on the agenda. And Karen, do you have, beyond just a basic update, are there like specific issue or items on the list that you'd like to discuss?
Well, I guess I'll start with, thank you for the update. This is, certainly has had things added to it since the last time I printed this out. So appreciate that. So I guess my question going forward, I'll just point out 2. Under community resources for parks, market the underutilized resources of park system in ways that bring non-residents such as hosting disc golf tournaments and seeking events and take advantage of remote control track. So over the weekend, we had 20 couples in our community from McGuanago who were here for a marriage retreat. So they came, went kayaking, and rented some e-bikes, that's all I know about it. And if I hadn't been contacted by the Airbnb folks, they wouldn't have known. So I see you have, that's kind of under Parks as the responsible party. So I am working with this particular Airbnb, but going forward, I just don't know how how you want us to either update or to give you new information. There's other things on here. Create wayfinding system allowing people from outside the area to also use the park system. Well, we do have now wayfinding signs, but there's nothing on this line. And many of the signs point to the parks and parking in the parks. So that's my first question is, if we know of things, this isn't, I'm not coming to you from a planning committee person, this is, outside outside of that. So how do we move this document forward, and how do you want us to respond to you? Do we just send you an email and say, hey, on line 7 of this, there's been some things done? I don't know.
That's a good question.
Mhm.
Well, this document is meant to be a working document for the Planning Commission. So it's supposed to assist in assist you in setting policy and some high-level directives. And these are things that were identified throughout that process of working with the Planning Commission to set, this comprehensive plan, that were items that you could choose at any point in time to say, hey, we'd like to work on that one, or we'd like to talk to this department about, advertising or anything that's listed here. So this is really just a document of ideas, and the reason some of it has dates filled in is because when we, a year ago or so, when we first pulled it out, this commission sat and went through some of those items and said, oh yeah, we've been working on that, there's a portion complete, or we have these ideas. And so it really is a living, working document that that is for the commission to decide to what extent they want to execute or to move forward on things. And of course, that oftentimes depends on the time that you would want to volunteer / the time that your staff has to implement those things. And so I really think it's an open discussion. There's a lot of great ideas here. And there are things that we can update. Obviously, Karen, to your point, wayfinding signs we've accomplished a lot in that area, so that's something we can actually mark off on the comprehensive plan that 3 years ago was identified as a need.
And it is marked off on the first page under economic development strategy, branding and marketing. This happens to be under one for parks, and I would imagine you will have, areas where it crosses over or mentioned again, that type of thing. So Jason, you have mentioned the we, being that this document kind of lands in this commission. I recall when a gentleman from Southwest Regional Planning presented to council, he said that there are communities that actually have, life-size charts on their walls and whatnot to keep the document moving and going, and as you just said, kind of a work in progress type thing. So yeah, I guess, so if, let's say I have a desire to, let's say, enhance the attractiveness and promote the community gardens for use by residents. So on here you have responsible party parks. Do I, or can I then contact parks and say, hey, is this something you want to work on, or do I say this is something that, come spring, I'm not gonna say let's do this tomorrow, but not the authority, do I have the means, the wherewithal, the whatever to contact clerks? I don't know.
I've got some thoughts.
Okay.
So first, like with the idea of keeping it present and in everyone's mind with that life-size blow-up one, you've mentioned rightfully we should have this as a standing item, and I agree, I think that's a great idea. If every meeting we have here, we pull up this checklist and just say, hey, is there anything to update? Number one, it's making us all think about it. It's also making the public, we have this recorded this evening, and it's making the public aware that this exists and we're working on it, and maybe they would want to read the comprehensive plan, so it's very good. So if it's just part of our standard operating procedure that this is on the agenda, we'll go through the checklist if we need to update anything. But I think rather than onesie twosieing and going directly to the department head, if this commission identified, here's a few things that are a priority that we would like to have worked on, that would give us the ability to then coordinate with staff and say, okay, here's some from a policy level or a conceptual idea. The commission would really like to see these things happen. So looking at your workloads, your staffing, your other projects you have going on, when do you think you'd be able to reasonably allocate time and resources towards this? That would allow us to better manage it and not overwhelm anyone, and then not really having 10 different conversations, and then we've got a game of telephone going on. So if we could identify a few things that we think are really important and we'd like to make progress on from this list, then we could take that back to the teams and see how we can implement that.
Okay, then I guess I'll just add some updates that I know of. I can't say that I saw this on here specifically, but we do have wayfinding signs for the Oak Ridge Mountain hiking, biking, snowshoeing sign out. I don't know if anybody is aware, but there have been a group of volunteers that have gone up, and the Oak Ridge Mountain bike trail is like phenomenal now. I'm gonna send somebody up there to get some pictures so that you all can see it. But supposedly they just have a little bit more to go, and it's mowed, and it's like wow. It's a wow factor for us. One of the volunteers that was on that, he asked me, he said, yeah, I see the wayfinding sign. Is there a possibility that we can also get a sign that points to the entrance to the trail? Because it's really, unless you know it's there, it's really hard to see. So, I don't know, I'll just throw that out. I don't know if that's something we can add to our list of signs. Okay.
For instance, and I think what Ashley said is exactly right, as a group, hey, let's work on these. When you mentioned some of them would be in the parks, I would like to have that presented to the park board, because I think actually some of them might actually volunteer now and do some of these things. I really think they might. But again, as Karen's point and Ashley's point, if they're not reminded or shown that these things were part of the city's plan that's been adopted, et cetera, they won't. But if they knew this stuff, if we directed, hey, let's get this stuff over to the park board, it would get there. And we may have some action on this from some of those folks. Not just that, the department has, yes, they need to know it, but in some of these instances, we have more resources than that. And you just gave a great example. Some volunteers show up and fix a bike trail. I think a lot of people in town, there's a lot of folks in town that volunteer to do one thing or another that might help with things if you start talking about making the parks prettier, making the trails better, whatever else. If we just keep this in front of people, excuse me. So that's kind of all I had to add to it. It's really just agreeing with both of you. Anybody else?
Is this on the website?
I don't remember. Is it? I think so.
The comprehensive plan is on the website, and then we previously shared the tracking list with you guys via email. And would you mind sending it out again? Just so that way it's on top of everybody's inbox? Thank you.
So I'll go
I
back
was
to
tracking
my,
one like you got, that came out with the meeting agenda tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh
That's
yeah,
just on the website.
that's right, that's right.
Yeah.
It was emailed to you guys.
We got it, we
I
got it,
got it.
we got it.
so I guess again, back to my question. Do you want just emails to both of you if we have updates? Because here we go again, engage the Historic Preservation Commission and County Historical Society, utilize architect, well, whatever. But there's a few things there that they have done. Did I email? What?
Well, what I would prefer is like, right, when this is on the agenda, we'll have it standing agenda item, that we would just go through and you say, I've got this to update. Jason, you've got the computer there, we could update it right at the meeting. And then that way, everybody sees that, hears it, knows what's going on, and then it saves the cluttering in the inboxes, you know?
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Right. Anything further on the comprehensive plan review and updates? Okay. Nothing under reports and updates, nothing listed under future agenda items. Does anybody have one besides making this one a standing item, which we'll do?
Well, this may not be an agenda item, well, a future agenda item, but just kind of an update. Probably a year ago or so now, we went through like how everything was zoned, what fits in what zones.
Yeah.
You guys were talking about cleaning up the ordinances and everything. Where's all that standing for like cleaning up the ordinances of, we never took anything off the books, we just kept adding, and somebody was gonna clean it up, or an agency? Not you guys, wasn't there an agency this was going to?
Yes.
Yeah, great question. So we did work with Becker to try to go through our zoning code and make some changes, fix some things, organize it in a way that one could easily navigate it and
Sure.
understand the rules of the game that they're playing.
Yeah.
So Becker did go through that process. We haven't been able to make much headway on the review of that and tweaking of that, so we don't have a final draft prepared. We are very excited that Matt is now with us, because now he can take this over.
Sorry, Matt, I didn't really mean to put that on TV.
So right now, Matt is, obviously trying to wrap his head around the current code that we have, and it's been awesome. We've had a lot of zoning stuff just happen recently, more than normal, and it just so happened to coincide with when he started, so it was perfect, phenomenal. So he's trying to wrap his head around all of that, get his footing under him, and then once he's ready, we'll have him dive into that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd add another somewhat complicating factor is that we've recognized it's not just the zoning ordinance that there's challenges with in our code. And so Muni Code was doing a broader review of all of our ordinances and came to the conclusion, and that this was discussed at full city council, that the ordinances were in such a condition that we might just consider remove and replace the whole thing. And so that was, there was direction given to the city attorney, and we worked with the city attorney to try to continue to move that project along. But when you're looking at a project of that expanse, it tends to go quite slow. So, but I do think that is a factor also that we have to consider in this. It's like, we're not only looking at zoning, really, we're looking at.
Yeah, because I remember both of them got brought up, but it became a what happened.
Yeah.
And the same too, we talked about short-term rental zoning.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we haven't made progress on that, so it's again another thing that we'll be having Matt look at too, and
Thanks,
keep
Matt.
pushing the ball.
Okay, one thing I wanted to say, at the last meeting, Mr. Jelinek requested a discussion on the airport.
Just some general information.
So it's going to happen.
Okay.
Ashley and I discussed, just weren't ready tonight with what we're going to do, because this is, our new director of public works has spent a good amount of time at the airport. And I would say, go ahead, if you have a comment.
Yeah, no, we're slowly working into a position where we're regaining, understanding and looking at long-range planning, looking at the equipment that's there, the condition. We're trying to address, concerns that exist. There really, an airport, right, needs to be in your capital improvement plan and needs to be talked about on a consistent basis, and for some period of time probably hasn't received the attention that a multi-million-dollar investment deserves. So we are doing that, have had conversations with Wendy Hottenstein, who is our Bureau of Aeronautics representative. She's I think her official title is airport engineer. Had numerous conversations, and I have reached out to her and said, hey, we're gonna wanna have a conversation about the economic impact, the benefits of the airport, the effects with a municipality withdrawing from an airport, so that you can all understand that, as well as what things we can do better to optimize and make the airport actually function as an airport should. So I've inquired with her about coming and presenting. She just has not responded yet. So we heard your request and we're moving forward with that, and I think it will be a good discussion and something that's very good, not only for this body to hear, but the entire council.
Thank you.
I just wanted you to know where that was, since you had been the one who requested it.
Simple question.
That's a good question. Does anyone else have an agenda item for the next meeting? Okay, next meeting date, fourth Wednesday of October, which is October 23rd. Is there a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion for Ms. Tepley, is there a second? Second, Mr. Jelenic on that one. All in favor of adjourning tonight's meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everyone. Tonight's meeting is adjourned.
Sorry, Lisa.